Hi, I'm Rob, and welcome back to the Uncut Network. Every month we rotate between directors, actors, and super specific genres, covering everything from exploitation to things your parents would absolutely approve of, relative unknowns to household names, and everything in between. But this isn't one of those episodes. This is one of the two big specials of the year, and this is the Frightfest special. And I have been joined for this one of my favourite episodes of the year because I don't need to have seen anything, let's be honest. I just live vicariously through my guests, who are Mike. Hello there.
Oh, hi.
Kat.
Hello.
Mal.
Alright.
And Sarah.
Hi there.
This is a loaded question because I know what everybody's like after these events, but how you're all feeling?
Still kind of in the midst of the come down from the high.
As good as can be.
Okay.
I'm actually alright this year.
Yeah. I'm alright, I've just got a bit of a bad throat. That's just constantly being in a Phoenix. That will do it to you, but apart from that, I'm alright.
I've got to say, nobody's seen as many as Kat, so I don't know how you do it. I think you've got a monkey's paw in your attic. I'm not sure. You have to.
Just, as like my husband says, that I'm just like super organised in general, and then when it comes to Frightfest, that then goes up an extra notch. And so yeah, I think I just train all year to go for like 5 days on like no sleep and no food, and yeah, just super busy, but it's fun. So
so structurally we sort of jiggled this a little bit because this is our third episode of this nature. The first one, I think I had COVID, so I literally just let everybody just say whatever they want, and it was about 5 hours long. I'm barely exaggerating here as well.
nope.
Last year we went through day by day highlights, and that again super long, deceptively so. So this year we're scaling it back, all the same, and just we're gonna do a few rounds, I guess. But the first one will just be that one movie from each of you. Maybe it'll overlap. I don't know. That one major highlight. So we'll go according to sort of order of arrival. So Mike, that one big highlight, what was it for you?
It's probably also the biggest surprise for me. It was Dead Mail. Because it just completely. Basically from the like promo beforehand, like in the program, everything. It's sort of like, okay, so it's a blood-covered letter saying someone's been kidnapped, ends up in the hands of a postal worker, and then a mystery, and then a mystery sort of unfolds. It's basically what I thought going in, and that lasts about, I don't know. That is just a setup for what ends up being a sort of strange story of like obsession and synthesizers. There's a lot of discussion about synthesizers and sort of two men sort of working together on a project, and a sort of power play that starts to emerge between them. I don't want to say too much more about it really, because it is one that really sort of does catch you by surprise. There's a really lovely. It's set in like I think it's set in like the 80s, and so there's a sort of very grainy, sort of slightly washed out quality to the film. It feels like a real attention to detail in terms of like if you believe in this world, and the sort of the main antagonist, the way he talks about synthesizers is almost like sort of like from a Peter Strickland movie, in that sort of strangely rhythmic, overly detailed quality with a sort of cadence that's sort of unsettling but sort of soothing. And yeah, I just really vibed with it. It caught me by surprise, but I got really sucked into the story and really didn't know where it was going to sort of end up, really. All those twists and turns along the way.
Anybody else see Dead Mill? Any other thoughts?
I did like it, and I thought that the presentation, that kind of retro kind of texture to the film really was so well done. But my main thing that kind of held me back on the film is that I just simply don't believe that anyone could care about synth music that much to do the things that he did. Just synth music, really?
Everybody has that hell little die on, and some people are mad about synth. What can I say?
Yeah, and this guy really is. It's a really good performance because it's sort of quite understated, really. But there's, I don't know, sometimes there's this face. There's so much like wriggling underneath. You can really sense it, but you don't quite know how he's going to respond to something. It'll either be like a minor setback, or he's going to go to extreme lengths to overcorrect. Yeah.
I was just going to say I quite enjoyed it. More so for the fact that it was clearly about the main protagonist who had obviously had a few failings in life and just wanted that one final hurrah for something, right? And I think the way that story played out, with the fact that he had to go to extreme lengths just to feel that he felt that he achieved something, and then obviously without spoiling it, the way it ended, it kind of sort of said, well, it is what it is. But I did sort of grapple with it for the first sort of 45 minutes to an hour, thinking, where's it going to go? And then it obviously flips a bit and changes gear, and then it does go places. And I think that's why I liked it more than I thought I did, because initially I walked out thinking, yeah, it was okay. Then I thought about it, and I think there's a lot in that you can unpack, and there's a lot you can even potentially relate to, which really added to the enjoyment of that film and that sort of, and then the kind of film you wouldn't necessarily seek out either, right? It's kind of film you get a festival, watch it at a festival, and think, I'm glad I saw that because I wouldn't have seen it otherwise.
It's a bit genre. I mean, we interviewed the people who made it, the two friends who made it, and from what they were talking about, it sounds like it's not really any sort of genre. It sort of bounces around a bit.
Yeah, I think that's probably fair. There's a real sort of moodiness to it. I think there's definitely sort of horror-y, thriller-y sort of things. There's not much that is like, obviously it's like outright horrifying, but I think there's a sort of uncomfortableness.
You say that, Mike, but according to Sarah, it's the synth. That's the horrifying.
I have nothing against synth. I just want to make that clear. I don't want all the synth heads to be after me for this.
They're going to cancel you.
I think I'd probably actually I'd probably compare it to something like Horde that came out this year, which I also isn't really a horror film, but also just felt very uncomfortable for a lot of it. So it's that sort of discomforting tone I'd sort of say.
Kat, did you catch this one?
I caught this one earlier in the festival run, Sundance or South by, wherever it played first, and that was a few hundred films ago. I remember it being a bit strange and difficult to kind of figure out what was happening, and I remember enjoying it, but not much else has managed to stick in because it was a little while ago.
Oh well, that's unfortunate. But yes, we'll jump to Kat next. Your major highlight of Frightfest this year.
Well, this has been my major highlight since I saw it at Fantastic Fest last year, and that is J.T. Molnar's Strange Darling. It is a thriller told in 6 chapters. It stars House of Usher's Willa Fitzgerald and Dinner in America's Kyle Gallner. And the cinematography is done by actor Giovanni Ribisi. It is his first credit as a director of photography. It was shot on 35mm film. It looks beautiful. The use of colour, they were inspired by like The Devils and Blue Velvet. So there's a lot of striking reds and blues. It's kind of a serial killer thriller / relationship drama almost. In addition to looking great, there's an amazing score by Zeeberg, which is available on Spotify, which just the film starts with a cover of Nazareth's Love Hurts, and I think that song has got a bit of a reputation for being quite cheesy, but the cover just makes it all like cool. And although it's set in modern times, it feels very much like it could be in the 70s. And the performances from the leads are incredible. The chemistry between Fitzgerald and Gallner is electric, and I can't really say too much more about the plot in any way, shape, or form because I believe the Strange Darling team will shoot me because they want it to be spoiler free. But if anybody didn't catch it at Frightfest, it is out in the UK on the 20th of September, and for those in America, it's out now, and they should probably be in the cinema watching it instead of listening to us. They can come back.
Don't typecast you, but it was almost preordained with Carl Gallner, wasn't it?
Yeah. I mean, so this is the thing. So I've always been a fan of his work. I remember him playing the Flash in Smallville for a few episodes, and then obviously he's in Jennifer's Body, and so when I got offered Dinner in America, I was like, yeah, sure, that dude. He's in some good stuff. And then, as people know, I fell in love with Dinner in America hard. And then from then, I've been like, whenever Kyle does a film, I am there. And he's just picked a really good string of films. You've got Dinner in America, and then you've got The Passenger. I mean, he managed to get into, a Scream film. Smile did really well. It should have been a streamer, went to cinemas, took a load of money. Now he's in the sequel. And then he's got, Strange Darling. He picks really clever scripts, and he is currently working on a new film with the director of Dinner in America alongside Samara Weaving. So, I mean, that's already
just
on my list
there,
to
really,
watch.
isn't it?
Yeah. So yeah, it's just, the dude's on a really lucky run at the moment, and I am here to support in any way that I can.
Anybody else catch it? I know there was a few nods when you mentioned it there, Cap, but other feelings. Everybody else's thoughts on Strange Darling.
I really enjoyed it. Like, I read the synopsis and I walked in being like, okay, so what's this going to be? Love Lies Bleeding for straight people? But no, it surprised me and delighted me. Like, it looks amazing. Like, the fact that is the cinematographer's kind of first big job is mind-blowing to me because it looks amazing. And yeah, I mean, I'm fully on the Carl Gallner train. Although my discovery of him was
Gallner deal.
Gallner. Oh my god. Carl Gallner. Was Veronica Mars.
Yes.
Like, I got really into that in uni, and he's in the first couple of seasons. Yeah, just absolutely great. It kept me guessing. And yeah, it was just really fun to kind of piece it together. Is all I will say. Like, I'm not going to say any more because I really don't want to spoil. But yeah, absolutely great film. Loved it.
Bad phrasing aside, but it does seem like the darling of the festival, really, from the outside in.
Maybe, yeah.
I think so. It was definitely good to see with a crowd. I think the audience was quite responsive to it. And yeah, as like Sarah alluded to, there's a fun structure to it that keeps things interesting. There's even like some like the side characters, are quite fun. There's a couple that you meet who have like a disgusting breakfast. They got a big vocal reaction from the crowd. But I want to see a movie all about them, and they're not even in it that much. But just the moments they're in, you get so much, and you get it is very fun. And
Mal, I don't know if there's any stone left unturned there, but any of your thoughts on Strange Darling?
Oh yeah, I mean, I liked it as well. I think it's one of the ones where everyone kind of sort of said, if you're going to watch, make sure you watch this one kind of thing. I know some people didn't get on with it when I chatted to them outside, Not because it wasn't any good or they didn't like it. I just think that it felt like it was. Some people don't go for those non-linear films, right? So they like something from start, middle, and end. I think that was some discussion I had, and I think overall it was well received. The only thing I think that stuck out for me, apart from that couple, which is a great shout by the way, was the interplay between the two leads, especially in the car. But there was so much tension, and the way it was shot. Again, going back to sort of how it looked and stuff, it was like you were in the car, right? There was them, both of them sitting in the car, having the discussions, having what they're talking about, and everything else, and all you could see was just them two, and it was just like you were there. And I think the way they were on screen was really, really strong, and you bought into all those scenes that they were involved in. And I think for me that really struck because you know the whole film is about them, and you're with them all the way, even to the last couple of scenes. You know, you're either you're not even taking sides. I don't think you pick one, or you sort of think, well, let's see what they do, and you're sort of hedging your bets with the way the story goes. But you're involved with the characters, and I think that's really, really a good thing to do with this sort of film when it's centered around two strong leads.
No, I agree.
Wow. Looking forward to it. Got a lot of high profile fans that one as well. But yes, next, Mal, your highlight.
So I mean, this wasn't my favorite film, but it's one that I'm glad I watched. It's called Scarlet Blue. This is over in the Discovery screens, I think on Friday. Now I picked it as a Discovery pick, and it's probably my first one I went for as a priority, only because of what I read on the synopsis. So it's a movie about schizophrenia. It's a movie about hypnotherapy, dealing with trauma, and all the wonderful things that I love watching films about. And and for me, I was like, well, this is going to be good. And then it's this visual extravaganza, is what it's called in the blurb. And then I read a bit more about it, and it was all about the visuals, all about the colors. I thought, well, this could be interesting, and I like those sort of films where it's not just here's a story, we're going to tell you the story, you're going to like it or not. This leaves so much to your interpretation. And Greg actually did the intro for it, and Greg's intro was phenomenal because the way he positioned it was like it's a piece of art that you're going to watch as a piece, like a painting that's come to life. And I was like, well, that's just really set it up. So I was sat down and then that stuck in my mind throughout the whole film because like the film itself, like I said, it's about this lady who's going through hypnotherapy, and schizophrenia is very, very strong in the movie. But it's never obvious that that's what the movie is about. It's about her journey, and the journey is through color. There's scenes with like her and another protagonist in gold paint, in like bright wigs, and it's just them interacting, or it's them kissing, or sharing a scene. Everyone seems to have green eyes as well in the film, which is brilliant, and that captivates you. The setup that one of the girls works in a like a convenience store, and again it's the blue neon lighting, got a bright blue wig, red outfit, and it's just the visuals are so striking, and you forget that it's a tough subject matter at the same time because there is trauma with her and her mother, and there's a reveal at the end which I won't go into obviously to avoid spoilers, but you forget that there is a heavy subject being dealt with. So you're in a dream like phase when watching this film. So I was sitting there, and then once I'd seen the film and it all transpired, and you sort of sit back and think, oh, that was an experience. I'm glad I saw that as a film, but also on a big screen, and it was huge. But then the Q&A afterwards, the director, Aurelia Mongin, I think I'm pronouncing it correctly, was talking about her influences and how her dad influenced her or encouraged her for art, to explore art and those sort of things, and her journey. And she comes from the Reunion Islands, a small little island next to Madagascar, and it's her own journey as well is portrayed. Was captured in the Q&A, and I was like, it's just almost like like you say, labor of love, but more than that. So it added to the experience of the film, and like I said, I can't do it justice by explaining it because it's not a traditional story in the sense of here's what's going to happen and there's so much going on, but the theme is hypnotherapy, dealing with schizophrenia, childhood trauma, and then but it's not in traditional like heavy sense. It's a journey, and it's a fascinating film.
Well, sold. That sounds great. Yeah. Anybody else catch Scarlet Blue?
I have. Shock. Shock is one of the 50 that I saw. Yeah, no, Scarlet Blue it was the first screener that I watched. Aurelia reached out to me on Instagram of all places and was like, would you like to watch my film? And I said, yes, please. Because, like Pokemon, I gotta catch them all. And yeah, Mal's right that the narrative is very loose. It's like a very experimental film in a way. Her dad was an artist. She grew up in a museum, surrounded by art. She's, as Mal was saying, she's very much been inspired by that. And I've never seen a film at Frightfest just look so beautiful. Like as Mal was saying, the costumes and everything are so stunning. And she has this I think the thing that struck me was she has this really interesting way of shooting skin. Like I've never really noticed skin in film before, but it looks beautiful. Like there's one scene with the hypnotherapist where his skin is kind of bronze and it looks like he himself is like a statue. And there's a scene that Mel mentioned with like the gold. There's like gold flakes like flaking off of their faces. And yeah, it's just a stunning film to watch. And it is more of like a sensory sort of exploration while you're watching it. And yeah, it's definitely one that people that are into that sort of film should seek out. If you like your, beginning, middle, end, everything tied up in a bow, it's not going to be for you. But if you're, open to something a little bit more avant-garde, then yeah, I highly implore to seek out Aurelia's work.
Like a sensory experience, it sounds more than a traditional story one. And cinema's the best place for those. It's not quite the same when you watch it on a screener at home, but fully encapsulated in that sort of experience in the screening room, that would have been quite something. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And again, I'd like to see more of her work now, just to sort of compare it and I'll look out for her work in the future, because that was just, like I said, it's an experience. It wasn't just sitting and watching a movie. It was you experienced the whole thing.
Yeah, this was her second feature. Her other one is I don't do French. Phonakis, I think it is. It is I will see if I can find where it's available, and I'll tweet about it once this episode goes out. But it's kind of similar to Scarlet Blue in the fact that it's a sort of a loose narrative and it's a sequence of events happening, and it's just as stylized. But yeah, she's got it's always really interesting when a filmmaker has such a visual style that you can tell throughout all of their work that this is what they want to
do. Sarah, Mike, did you catch Scarlet Blue? Are you sold on Scarlet Blue? Is there?
Yeah, I know a lot of people really loved it. So yeah, I'm definitely.
That was one I missed, unfortunately. I actually had quite a hard time getting any Discovery tickets this year. They were just like, it was like I logged on about 5 minutes after they went on sale and then just gone. So there was a few things I missed this year.
That's a pity. But segueing awkwardly, Sarah, your first highlight of the event of Frightfest this year.
It's like, yeah, instead of the stuff I didn't see, let's talk about something I did see. So whilst I would say that my film of the fest was probably Strange Darlings, I want to kind of talk about Shelby Oaks, which I think is an interesting little one, because it's kind of also a tricky one, because they're very particular about saying, don't give anything away about it.
Yes.
So it really is a thing about how much I can really say. But it's produced by Mike Flanagan, and it's directed by Chris Stuckman, who is a movie review YouTuber. And this whole film concept, I believe it came out of a sketch that he did for his channel for Halloween one year. And then he sort of got funding through Kickstarter, and it was just going to be the small thing. And now it's, I think then it sort of grew, and then Flanagan got on board and things. But it's a story about some YouTubers, some paranormal investigation YouTubers who went missing. and it's 12 years later, and the sister of one of them is still desperate to find out what happened to her sister, and she believes that her sister is still alive, and she's doing this documentary. There's this documentary crew, and she is just doing everything she can to still find her sister, but it takes some really interesting kind not twist exactly, but just kind of like it does a few kind of like slightly surprising things, and I think it plays with expectations in a few ways, and maybe not the strongest ending, but overall I enjoyed it. And apparently before it's released next year, it's going to have some minor changes, I think, in terms of editing and special effects. So I think this could be like a real sort of potentially be a bit of a crowd pleaser. And for like a first feature film, like it's pretty good. Like I think as a directorial debut, I've seen a lot weaker. And although I imagine kind of like with the name of someone like Flanagan behind it, probably helped a bit in that regard.
Helped a hell of a lot, I imagine. Yeah, because he's
yeah,
horror variety at this point, isn't he?
Mm-hmm. But I will say there is a top-notch library research montage in it. Like my day job, I'm a librarian, so like and I was just watching it like, she's using the microfilm machines, she's using the books properly, she's doing online archive searches. Just brilliant, 10 out of 10.
I don't know how to follow that. I'm sorry.
There's a very niche appeal, but I appreciated it all the same. But no, it's like, I wouldn't say it's amazing, but I really enjoyed it, and it's kind of in a little way. I'm kind of rooting for it in a way. The film.
I love to sort of compare it to something else, because if I do, it might spoil it heavily. But just sort of a very beloved Australian one and done found footage movie. I think is the only way I can say that without spoiling where this might potentially go. I don't know.
I can neither confirm nor deny that.
Yes, I think that's the wisest thing to do, yes. But Shelby Oaks, does anybody else catch this one?
Yes, I think similarly, it doesn't necessarily bring like loads new to the table, but it's well done, and it's got some good creepy moments. It's I think I think like Sarah says, I can imagine this probably playing well in like to like sort of mainstream audience sort of thing. I'd be interested to see how it goes down, and indeed what changes they make. It's sort of like not the film you expect it to be going in. I think you can say that much. It's good fun.
Kat, Mel, anything on this one?
I will let Mel go first.
Right, I'll wait for you. I'll do polite as well. All right. I quite liked it. It's one of my sort of favourites of the festival in terms of like how it played out. As Mike says, stuff has been done before, but I liked how it evolved into what it became. Trying to be very, very careful not to spoil it as well, but how it started and where you're thinking. I was thinking, it doesn't go this, and it doesn't go that, and it ends up going a completely different way. In some respects, and I like that. But I like how they put the story together in the end as well, and how it all fits. And some some of the shots outdoors, again without spoiling it. I'm being really careful what I say now. Some of the outdoors as well. I think that they really capture that as well. There's a lot of dread in some of the scenes, a lot of dread in the images that you see. And I think that worked really, really well, especially some of the sort of the nighttime camera shots and stuff, which this sort of film needs. Right? You need that sense of like looking over your shoulder, dread and stuff. And I think it's done that really, really well. But as everyone says, go in blind. Again, if you're thinking of something in this film, all I would say to people listening, stick with it, and it becomes something completely different, which I think works really, really well.
I will say that Neon picked it up for distribution out of Fantasia, and obviously, as we know, Neon's having quite the year at the moment with Cuckoo and Longlegs, so that they've picked this is obviously going to get a lot of eyes on it when it starts to release. I think the scare sequences really well executed to the point of sat at home with my screener. A jump scare got my cat. And she's not easily riled. She just sat there, and all of a sudden she like jumped half a foot in the air, and it's like, oh, sorry, Raj. If it can scare a cat, then I think that's that's a whole new level of terror. So it's I think what he does with the scare sequences are great.
Put it on the poster.
Oh, absolutely!
Exactly.
Yeah,
Wow. Okay, so we'll go for a second time round now. So anything else that wasn't mentioned, just want to draw a highlight to again. So Mike, we'll go from beginning again. Anything else? Draw your eye?
Well, I guess on a personal level, Generation Terror, the documentary about sort of millennial horror, was. I know some of the people involved, so I was already excited going in to be able to see some of my friends up on the big screen. But I think it is also quite a solid documentary. So it's by the same people who did Found Footage Phenomena and J Horror Virus. So it's sort of a similar mold to them, and they're sort of talking heads talking about a subject, but with this one, whereas the other two are sort of more focused, it's tackling quite a lot of different topics, because obviously when you sort of look at the noughties, there's a lot going on, and they cover so many different topics, like rise of the internet, sort of rise of terrorism to a degree, sort of the political world at the time, and obviously they cover stuff like video analysis, torture porn, all these boom of remakes that we're getting, but somehow they managed to sort of make it flow really nicely into sort of coherent narrative of, like, you really get a feel of what that period was like and what the different sort of horror were coming out. So they're picking some interesting choices. I think everyone to get a mix of filmmakers and critics to sort of give useful context, and also make me, to be honest, a lot of these films I hadn't seen, because this is sort of like around the time when I was sort of like probably old enough to go see these films in cinemas, but they did look too off-putting to me at the time, but they sort of gave a good case for like why these aren't just sort of gory, schlocky things, which I think sometimes that period of horror is sort of dismissed as, and they actually picked out. They sort of look at stuff that we all know, like stuff like Hostel and things like that, but also other smaller films that might have sort of gone under the radar a little bit, but all part of his overall. So I think it was a good documentary.
And Grotesque, which is rightfully under the radar because it's justifiably named.
Although the director, I have a soft spot for the director, especially his take on Martyrs and what he likes and doesn't like about Martyrs felt very in keeping with how he with his work, which I thought was quite
Didn't he called it weak, didn't he? If I remember correctly,
he said it was good until it gets philosophical, which is like, isn't that what Martyrs is about? And then he sort of almost getting, they got like Neil Marshall and Christopher Smith, so Christopher did Creep, and they sort of contradict each other, or sort of slightly cross paths with each other in a quite a funny way, but in a way that's all like good spirited and stuff.
Yeah, you do get the impression with that one that they've got about 4 documentaries worth of Joe Lynch. But
yes, he's in it a lot. Yes, but he has a lot to say.
Yeah, imagine he's one of those people you say hello and then a day later you're leaving. Which is fine. Every documentary has somebody like that, I suppose, don't they? They have to have that.
Absolutely.
That's centerpiece. But anybody else see Generation Terror?
Unfortunately, that was one of the ones I missed. Sorry, Kat.
I saw it. I love Sarah and Phil. For those that don't know, outside of documentaries, they are the people bringing you the special features for all of your boutique releases. So Phil works with Second Sight, and Sarah does a lot of the videoing for features on Second Sight and Arrow and various things. So like them doing a documentary is very natural for them because that's kind of what they're doing in their day job, and through that they've obviously managed to get a nice Rolodex of contacts who they called upon for this. Naughty's horror is, that's when I was 15, 16. So it's right in my wheelhouse, and it's kind of a nice trip. What I really liked is that it's not long. So many of these horror documentaries are 3, 4, 5 hours long. I'm thinking about, the In Search of Darkness series. There's 3 of them, and they're all like 4 hours long, which technically makes that one 12-hour documentary, and it's too much to sit and watch in one go. So this being, 90, 95 minutes is perfect because it kind of gives you just enough information without overloading you, so you can go okay, and then you can kind of go off and do your own research, dig a little deeper into stuff. So yeah, I did sort of really enjoy that kind of trip back in time.
Being from that generation as well, it's like horrible nostalgia, remembering just how crappy it was, essentially.
Dare you?
Politically speaking, I guess.
Well, yes, politically speaking, but there's also this. It starts slightly before the noughties. It starts kind of in the mid-90s, and there's a nice little section about the X-Files. And as somebody who's obsessed with the X-Files, that was quite nice to sort of hear about how that then sort of like opened the door for some more horror content in the film world.
Yeah. Use a clip from that episode that scared the life out of me as a kid. The guy who sort of sneaks between floorboards.
Squeeze. Eugene Toombs.
Yeah, Yeah, that one scared me really badly as a kid. Mal, did you catch this one?
Unfortunately, no. It's one of the ones that I didn't get. Again, like Mike said, I knew some of the people involved, and I was quite keen to check that out. Again, similarly, I'm sort of an 80s, 90s kid, but sort of 90s, 2000s was when I think horror became a bit more like acceptable, as it were, because there's a lot of stuff being released. Whereas when I was growing up, you had to sort of go to the local video shop and kind of sort of pretend you're 18 and get it, and it wasn't available much. So I think it would have been good to see how that evolution happened, I suppose. But it sounds like a good one to have seen, especially the stuff that was out that time. But just on the point about what you said, Rob, about how they were made at the time, I think a little while back, I did an all-nighter of 90s horror. And with some friends, we're sitting there, and I'm like, this would never get made now, because sometimes it's just either politically incorrect or just cliche stuff going on. But at the time, 90s horror just kind of had its place because it revived a lot of what we now appreciate, right? So if we didn't have, I know we did Last Summer and all of those sort of films, we probably wouldn't have some of the stuff we have now as well. So I think it had its place, definitely.
I feel like the 90s and the 2000s get dismissed a lot of the times when it comes to decades of horror. So I think it's. I really want to see the doc. So I'm excited that that it's something that's focusing on kind of this particular time period.
Very much overlooked as a decade. The sort of 98 to 2008. That's the sort of window it covers, really. But yeah.
And I guess enough time has passed that it's able to look at it as a historical thing, because what can I say is, like, it's not too long. In a good way, it feels longer because it's so comprehensive, because it's so packed full of stuff, and even it does touch on the night. I spent a good time on the 90s as well, like to contextualize the noughties as well. Just all quaint.
It's that millennial thing, though, isn't it? It's just, the early noughties, that was 2 years ago, wasn't it? It's just, no, not anymore. It's okay to make documentaries about that now.
Just to follow up on what Sarah said, actually, I don't know if it gets overlooked as much as not recognised enough, because, like, if you look at
derided maybe.
Yeah, because Final Destination, the Saw films, American Psycho, all the sort of films that we look back at now, I think they're amazing. Forget that they came out in like a 10-year, 12-year period. So it's almost like this generation terror doc. It probably would, hopefully, it does sort of say in a way that these films were actually really good, but probably don't get recognised as much as they probably should, or have this space in the annals of horror history. Because again, those sort of films really allowed films, like I said earlier today, to be made now. But you could go through loads of them, and there's so many classic films that you would watch and rewatch. So yeah, I definitely think they need that, or have that place in history for done for horror.
Absolutely. Kat, another pick from yourself?
Yes, I guess my next pick would be Elric Kane's The Dead Thing. Again, the theme of this year's Fright Fest seems to be films that you shouldn't know anything about before you watch them. But it's like a relationship psychological thriller, I guess. There's a woman she's on all the dating apps. She's going from hookup to hookup. She finally matches with a guy she likes, and then he ghosts her, and she becomes obsessed with finding him. And when she does, things get dangerous. And it's just a really interesting sort of look at modern dating and the toxicity of some of the relationships that can come out of this. I know quite a few friends on the apps, and just the horror stories that they tell me about them are enough to make a film out of. But Elric Kane has kind of taken that as a jumping off point and pushed it really into the horror direction. And it also it shows LA in a different way. I think so often it's beautiful Hollywood or it's broken Hollywood, and this is like the only places that you really see in this are the back of cabs, a dull office building, and a streaming, an endless stream of bars. That's it. It's like just the monotony of her life is go to the club, go to work, go to the club, go to work. And I think that's something that a lot of us can relate to in adult life. It's you get up, you go to work, you go to bed, you get up, you go to work, go to bed. And it's not really something that I think they've done with Los Angeles on screen before, is show that it's actually a bit boring there, which I quite liked. The lead, Blue Hunt, she is incredible. As too is her partner, Ben Peter Smith, I think his name is. I apologize if I have that wrong. He is the guy that she meets, who coincidentally is called Kyle. I promise that isn't why I like the film. But he's a stunt performer. He's a stunt performer by day. This is like one of his first acting roles, and I know that some people kind of had an issue with him, saying that he was a bit like stilted or whatever, but he wasn't very emotive, I think is what people have said. But that's kind of the point of the character to a good degree, and him being a stunt performer really helps because it's all about like the physicality and his thinking, like his movements through, rather than his emotions. But that works within the setting of the story. But yeah, it's, if you want a horror about a bad relationship, sort of like a Nina Forever or a Bad Match, that sort of film, then yeah, The Dead Thing is definitely one to have a look into.
Yeah. Podcast have done good there. That's how I became aware of that one. Kind of weird to see them worlds match. I don't know where I was leading with that. I'm sorry. Does anybody else catch The Dead Thing?
Yeah, I've always really interesting. Also, one thing I've noticed is a weird detail that she has like a copy of like House of Psychotic Women on the side of her bed, like the Killer Janice book. And I don't really know what that says about the character, but I appreciated that being there. And it's great. And like Kat says, like that sort of monotony. There's this very strange rhythm that the film gets into that really seduces you in. I think it's perhaps a little bit too slow in parts because of that, but it's really interesting. We said about the performer of Kyle, and it makes a lot of sense that he's a stunt performer because he has a real presence throughout the film. When the camera just holds on him, the way he sort of holds himself on screen is really really compelling. So yeah, I think there's a lot to like in it, definitely.
Mal, Sarah, did you catch this one?
No, I actually think this might have been the one that I kind of slept in and missed.
Wow.
When you hit that wall, you hit it hard.
I did catch it. Again, first up, I think it was Sunday, wasn't it? Screened? Was it Monday? I can't remember which day it was. Monday, yeah. So first up, I was struggling because I was like, just trying to make sense of it. But again, I liked the way it played out because I thought it was going one way. It doesn't. Without spoiling it, I think it does make you go back and revisit the film. So I remember walking out of the film thinking, I had a lot of questions, and I was just talking to a group of friends, and I'm like, so what happened there? What happened there? They're like, oh, this was that. I'm like, oh, okay, it makes sense now, because I think the way it plays quite straight, the film, until you sort of, without spoiling it, realise what's going on. And then you think, oh, okay. And it's quite clever the way it's done, because you're in you're in sort of one world and then transported to another world to sort of think, well, this is kind of what's happening. But like I said, I like the dreariness of it all. You're right, Kat. It was LA's. We all see LA, Hollywood, and California, but there are dreary parts of California, no doubt, and it shows it really, really well. And I think it adds to the film because the monotony of her job and her life, and just like, and it just adds to that. So I think it's really, really well done. I'd like to watch it again though, because I think there's probably a lot to unpack and a lot to sort of pick up on, like little things and notes along the way. So definitely one I want to check out again when it comes out.
Is that one got anything picked up for it yet? Because it did seem to get a lot of attention, a lot of positive attention.
Yellow Veil Pictures are the sales agent for it, I believe. So I think there is a release like in some stage of the works. I mean, Yellow Veil have like an excellent pedigree of picking titles, so I don't think it'll be long before it gets picked up if it hasn't already been.
Excellent. So Mal, another highlight from yourself.
So another Discovery pick, which I think hopefully some people else have seen as well. It's called The Last Podcast. It was one that I really wanted to see again because the premise looked interesting, and I thought I think the was on the main screen. Anyway, I went into it, and it was in the little screen upstairs. So there's only about 30 of us in the screen, not even that. The director was there, and the director introduced it in a very fun way. And I thought, this could be a fun film. And it is. It's a fun film. It's kind of like, so it's about, again, a podcasting type film. So, and it's another one that you go in with knowing very little, because there's stuff that happens that I don't want to spoil. But basically, there's a guy that runs a podcast, like paranormal podcasting. And then I've got to stop now because I'll work out what to say without spoiling it. But then stuff happens. Because he's trying to sort of disprove or prove either way about ghosts existing or not. And then there was he's a debunker of this sort of stuff, and there's like a rival podcaster that he's having a bit of to and fro with as well. So it starts with that, and then something happens, and then the film takes a turn, and then there's like this. With that, again, the blurb on Letterboxd and other stuff will tell you what's happening, what I'm trying not to say. But then there's like a buddy element to the film, which really works for me. And then this whole thing about this buddy system or buddy environment between this podcaster and another character. And then it grows from that. And what you end up getting is this almost like trade-off between the characters in the film. I don't know, Kat, can I say, do you think this is a spoiler if I say what the other character's about? I don't know. You've seen it, right? I'm guessing.
I don't know. Yeah, I've seen it. Yeah, I there was a second screening that I did that I hosted. It's about a podcaster that is determined to make it big. And then one night, as Mel says, he's trying to debunk the supernatural. And one night, this professor at university gets in touch and says, "Hey, I've got proof that ghosts don't exist." And he goes there, and then the aftermath of that completely changes his trajectory, and suddenly he's got listeners and people's attention, but his new co-host that he acquires isn't all that they seem to be.
That's the best way you've sidestepped so many spoilers. I love it. I love it. But yeah, but the reason why I picked it was because it played really well because everyone was into the film. Like I said, it was a small screen, probably deserved a bigger screening, to be fair, but I think it came into the festival pretty late. I think it was 3 weeks before the festival started, it got sent, like the final version got completed. So that they, I get why it was programmed. How it was programmed, but it played really well. And I think the thing with the film was the way the story's told. You're on board with everything that happens, weirdly, and then you see that when you watch it, you see what I mean. You're all part of the journey, and you almost like, again, I want to know what happens, and you care about the characters as well. And there's a whole relationship thing happening between the co-host and he's got a girlfriend and sort of their life as well alongside it. But it's a great watch. It got a second screening, and I recommended some people to queue up for tickets, and I did get it, and they came back thinking that was great as well. It's a really, really good watch. It's it does. Horror comedy is always difficult to do as well, and they've done the comedy elements quite right, because you can make a horror comedy come across very, very cheesy, and it wasn't. It played well. So again, seek it out. It's a great watch. The guy actually made McPherson tapes. I don't know if you saw that a while back. Dean Aliotto.
That's why I wanted to. I was out. I would have liked to see it, but I just didn't get a ticket in time. But yeah, because McPherson tapes is a strange little early found footage.
Yeah, that's it. So and it was great.
The premise.
That's the one with the aliens, isn't it?
That's the party.
Yeah. So no, it was good, and like I said, he was great about it. So yeah, definitely recommend keeping an eye on it when it's out. Really, really good watch.
An American Werewolf in London was one of Dean's key sort of inspirations for this. So it has that very similar sort of vibe to it, the sort of the comedy with the horror balance. So yeah, it's very. I mean, I hosted the second screening and did a Q&A with Dean, and Dean is utterly charming and so funny, and it's so easy to see how he has made this film. It's very different to the McPherson tape, but it's just so much fun. I think that was maybe something that was perhaps missing across the programming of Frightfest this year. There weren't too many that were just fun films, and I think this was one of them. And yeah, it would have been nice to see it in a bigger screen, but obviously, timing doesn't always allow for that.
You kind of answered my question I was going to have, because podcasters in horror movies uniformly quite unlikable. But the fact that you're saying it's a fun movie, I think you've kind of answered the question for me anyway. So, yeah.
The film came together because of the McPherson tapes. Dean was invited on a lot of shows to do with the supernatural and the paranormal, and so he was doing a podcast for a UFO guy. The host had to go away to have surgery, so Dean stepped in for a month or so to host it, and he was really G'd up afterwards and yeah, I'm going to make a podcast. But then, he was very driven to, what am I going to do? I need to have 100,000 subscribers and blah, blah. He basically wasted 6 months of his life, trying to perfect the perfect podcast, until his girlfriend was like, why are you doing this? You're miserable. And he was like, yeah, you're right, I am. But he didn't want to waste 6 months of his life. So he then channeled that into a script. And then similarly, his lead, who plays the podcaster, Charlie Bailey, Eric Tabak plays him. He used to do stuff for BuzzFeed and a few other outlets, and had sponsors and everything. And then he just burned out one day and just gave it up. So there was this nice kind of kismet thing of him finding this film and kind of playing a weird version of himself. So I think anybody with a podcast or goes on podcasts will find a lot to relate to, and maybe some more humor than somebody that's not familiar with this world.
Yeah. And just to add to that, it goes dark on that subject as well, because there's so much drive around subscribing and liking and sponsorships and viewerships and that sort. And there is a section of the film where you can see the toll it takes on the host, because he's without that, what have you got, kind of thing. And it does sort of touch that subject quite well.
Very good. And last, but far from least, Sarah, what's your other pick?
my other pick is actually the one Discovery screening I did get into. And it's another documentary. It's called Boutique. And it's basically just like about the rise of these boutique DVD and Blu-ray distributors putting out the films that would kind of normally get sort of lost in the shuffle, just like these various crazy little horror films that are part of the narrative of cinema history and a part of why we all love movies, but they don't always have a release. And these companies and these fans, they are absolutely fans, just are seeking out films to give them the love they deserve and to get them out to more people so that they can spark the same sort of love, essentially.
It keeps these movies alive by those people. Yeah, absolutely.
And as someone who cannot resist a good second sight release, I found it very validating in a way. It's like, oh yes, I'm contributing in the preservation of film.
Yeah. Keep on getting on my Google News. How there's all these articles about physical media is the future. It's not ridiculous at all to collect these things. So yeah. It's nice to have a documentary which celebrates that. Anybody else see Boutique?
No, I would have liked to though. It does sound like a really sweet little documentary.
Or sorry, Boutique to Preserve and Collect. That's like the full title.
Okay. Mal, Kat, did you catch this one?
No, it's one of the ones I didn't. I focus on the features first and then save the documentaries for another festival.
Yeah, same. I didn't see it, but again, like Sarah said earlier, you keep an eye out for that Vinegar Syndrome release or Second Sight or and that sort of stuff, and Severin. And I think, as a kid, there were the odd labels in the 80s that would distribute stuff, and in a similar vein, like Tarn was a great one. They got a lot of J-horror over, and you had that link.
Oh, I miss Tartan.
Yeah, I know, right? And I think it's great to sort of see that this still exists. So I'll be keen to watch a documentary on that because without these guys, we're at the mercy of streamers or streaming platforms, I should say.
The problem with streaming is that it can go like that. Like the movie can be there one day, just gone the next, and you got no way of seeing it anymore.
Disney are notorious at it. Not much that's relevant to this podcast, but still they are notorious for doing it. Just unexisting things all of a sudden. I guess putting you all on the spot, a few of you have mentioned, but just favourite of the festival. Mike, just don't think about it. Favourite of the festival?
Yeah, Dead Male.
Okay. Kat?
Strange Darling.
Mel?
Yeah, I'm thinking. Substance. I like where it went.
Okay. Not heard about that one. What's that one?
So The Substance was the closing film of the festival. Demi Moore and Margaret Qualley, is that pronouncing it correctly? It's a body horror, and it just goes from first gear, and it goes like in gear 10 by the end of the film. Loads of references to like Society and The Fly and stuff as well, and it's. I've seen letterbox reviews already that it's a bit of a Marmite film. I get that, and I can see why to some degree because it looks at the subject matter of sort of women aging and how the pressures that women are unfairly put under when they do age, and you're not pretty enough, and if you're in this media, you got to look pretty, you got to look young, you got to look this and that. Those pressures, and it's handled quite well in my view. But obviously, I'm a bloke. I know as much as I do know, but I like that it touched that subject matter, but then the body horror stuff just goes crazy. and it was just great to see. And I think seeing that audience as well kind of helped, because sort of cheering on the same stuff. You're going for it. It's going a bit wild. But it's probably my favourite, and not because it was a close-up. I think because it just felt like an out-and-out crazy horror.
That's the director of Revenge, isn't it? And that went to 11 as well in the third act, absolutely. Yeah. More blood than I've ever seen in any movie at the end of that one. So, Sarah, your favourite?
I'm also going to have to go with Strange Darling.
Okay. So I think the closing question here is just how you all think it was as a Frightfest, whether it was your first or not your first. Classic Frightfest? Less than classic? What's your feelings of?
I think as Kat alluded to, I think there was a lot of sort of slow burn horrors, which I'm not necessarily against, but I think there could have been a little bit more variety, I think, of films, and I think there weren't as many like real standouts. These are the ones that everybody's talking about. But on a social level, Frightfest is always fun. It's nice to ever meet up with people that you only see once a year. So on that sort of level, it's always that's at least half the pleasure of any of these sorts of festivals, really. And I think it's a new cinema as well, in the Odeon as well, and it was a good venue. I think it was especially in the main screen. Yeah.
Okay. Well, we'll go on the same sort of order. So, Kat, classic or not classic?
I mean, obviously, this was the 25th anniversary, so it was obviously like a big milestone for the festival. And yeah, I think the new venue worked really well. I mean, I wasn't in the main screen. I was barely in the press screen. I was primarily stood in the foyer asking people questions, but it was nice. There was more space than at the former location of the City World. There was more light. It was nice to be on the media wall and be able to see what was happening outside. I wrote something for the program, which is basically about the history of the festival, and the whole thing of this festival is it's a family. And as Mike said, you go to this festival once a year, and you might see people that you only see at Frightfest, for that time in the year. And it's nice to get to see people and hang out. And I got to spend a lot of time with filmmakers, and I did a lot of introductions and Q&As, more than I originally thought, because some were last minute. But yeah, it's always a lot of fun to be at Frightfest.
Mal?
So I think in terms of films, I think Frightfest over the last few years have sort of always gone for the sort of the films you may not normally have seen, championed a lot of new filmmakers. The First Blood strand has always been strong, and it was strong in this year. So I think sort of the style of films has changed slightly. Whereas again, in the program, I wrote a little bit about previous films of Frightfest. And looking back, there was that Old Boy and Audition and House of Thousand Corpses and stuff. They were all known films at the time, but again, they weren't as known as they are now, because they were like being championed then. So I think Frightfest has always championed stuff. We just look back at it fondly in the same way we look back at films that we saw at Frightfest years gone by. You now go back and think, oh, that's an amazing film. But at the time, you're like, okay, it's new. Is it going to be what is as good as we think it is? But having said that, we always want that. There's one or two titles that everyone's talking about. But I think it's a strong lineup, to be fair. I think the main screen generally had a pretty good lineup throughout. I think Discovery is always good. There wasn't that many Discovery films that I think I heard people walking out thinking that was terrible. I didn't hear any of that, from at least that I know of anyway. But as far as the venue goes, I think it was. I told Alan, I said, look, it's an upgrade, definitely, in all aspects. Not only the reclining seats, but like Kat says, the space, the light, the venue. The fact that when you walk out in the old cinema world, you'd have to sort of snake around that corner, and it was chaos on Saturday night. Whereas now you're out and you're straight out in the open, and you've got daylight, as you say, right? But I think I like the layout of the cinema helped with the upstairs and downstairs and that sort of thing. And again, I'm a sociable chap. Meeting people is a huge part of why I go to Frightfest as well, and I think that's always a good thing. But I think, classic Frightfest. I don't think it was anything but that. But I think it'd be interesting to see beyond this now, how it continues to use Odeon to continue for it to grow. Yeah, it's a great event.
Yeah, I have to back up what you said there about just the quality of stuff that they've picked over the years. There was a list floating on Letterboxd and just a number of stone cold absolute classics that have had some sort of premiere at Frightfest is just staggeringly good. So yeah, absolutely. Sarah, closing us out.
Well, I will say that I'm not sure if I didn't think it was amazing. I think it was kind of like a standard kind of year. I don't think there was anything that was just like a real like whoa kind of film. But I do think the venue was such a great environment. Like it really is an upgrade, and not just because now we have legroom and the seats, but no, I do think that what really makes Frightfest is the community, and I would say this year has been great for that for me. I've just had some really great times, really great memories with people, just talking films, talking horror, and yeah, I think ultimately good films or bad films, good year or bad year, what really matters the most with Frightfest is the people.
And now I'm going to ask a question which you've basically just answered anyway, but I'll do it anyway. Every event will be somebody's first, so is there any advice that because it is an intimidating idea for some people to go to a film festival, so is there any sort of thoughts that you guys have on that? Sort of this is like the next one potentially will be your first ever Frightfest.
Oh gosh. I mean, one of the things from probably my first Frightfest was I talked to Mal, and he definitely made everything a lot less scary in terms of so many new people.
Yeah. Anybody else? Any other thoughts for people going to the first one, maybe?
Yeah, everybody is friendly. So, like, if for example you're going on your own, just strike up a conversation with the person next to you, and I think every time I've done that, it's they've always been like, if I just see them in the screen, I don't necessarily see them outside of it. It's just nice because I think what's nice is actually I was talking to somebody else about this, is that everyone's got the same frame of reference, generally speaking. You're all there to see horror, so at the very least, you always have that to sort of start off the conversation and go off on. So yeah, I think it's sort of. Just jump in. If you're going and you don't know literally anyone there, as I said, start with the person next to you, and they might be your best friend for 10 years or whatever.
Kat, Mal, on the same question.
I would, I just echo what other people have said. Just talk to people. Go to the Phoenix in the evening. Everybody's super friendly. You go to karaoke. You don't have to do karaoke, but the karaoke night is always a really good night to like get to know the people around you. But yeah, that's the thing. I think most people started their Frightfest journey alone, and now they've got like big groups who they go and they go with, they sit with, they spend the whole weekend with. So yeah, just get chatting to people. It's very easy to be adopted by various pre-existing groups of people because it really is a family. But I think Mal has been going the longest, so we should listen to his sage advice.
I kind of echo, I suppose, but it's a funny thing. My journey started on my own. I came on my own one year, and I thought let's give it a go. But I think the thing that allows you to what you can do, at Frightfest, and my advice to anyone is, not only make conversation. That's the easy part. Is don't feel you can't make a conversation. So when you come out of the cinema, right, you'll see groups of people. And it's intimidating because you're like, well, I want to be part of that conversation. But if you're on your own, you're sat on the side thinking, who do I talk to? And I can tell you this, I adopted a new kid not personally in my own life, in Frightfest this weekend. Forget his name now. Obviously, I'm a terrible friend, but he'd come over from Norway. It's his first and he just come over and he said, I wanted to come over. He's from a little town in Norway somewhere, and I think I happened to have a Discovery film with him, and he got talking to a friend of mine the other day because I think they were in a Discovery film the day before, and she was like, "Oh man, he's come over by himself." I'm like, "Yeah, you can hang around," and then he sort of like just hung out for a couple of films because we just happened to have 2 Discoveries back to back, and then I think I went to get a sandwich, and he's like, "Can I come along?" I'm like, "Yeah, come along." And then he was at the Phoenix that night. I'm like, "Oh, it's you again," kind of thing. And it was, he just happened, I said, "Yeah, fine." And then that gave him the confidence to go into the Phoenix the next night and make more friends and talk to people. And I think that's the epitome of it all, is don't be afraid to break into the groups. And my only advice is don't be creepy, don't be weird, just be polite, right? Because it's easy to be someone that you should. So my advice is just, be polite, be nice. You're more likely to be adopted into a group or be part of a conversation that way. And all the other bits people have said, be sociable, talk to people, and talk to the organisers, talk to Kat. You're on the media wall the whole day. And I do that. I'll say, "How you doing?" I'll go and talk to Helen, I'll go and talk to Alan, Ian, Greg and Paul, and they're all friendly, and that makes you feel part of the festival because, again, early on, that's what I did. I said, well, if the people that run the festival are friendly, then I want to come back. So that always helps as well, right? So that'd be how I position it, as well as what everyone else has said.
Yeah, it's a nice way to end the episode, I think, that. So I think, that's about it. The next episode of the series we've already recorded, so it's kind of a weird timeline. Podcasts do that to you. But that next episode was the non-horror version of the Kiyoshi Kurosawa episode. But, yes, for this episode, Mike, where can we find you and the stuff that you do online?
Well, you'll be able to find me on that next episode, for one. You can find me at Autistic Horror on various socials, and also Mike Leach on Letterboxd.
Kat?
So I am at Gizmo Shikari on Letterboxd, Instagram and Twitter. I also have a podcast called Movies with a Mummy, which I get shot if I don't mention. And I'm just also going to, we were talking earlier about boutique releases. I have an essay on the forthcoming release of Second Sight's Late Night with the Devil. So you can find my thoughts on that film in there.
Mal?
So I'm on social media with my name, Mal Jotley. So Instagram, Twitter or X. And I'll be around most festivals where if I can get in.
And Sarah?
I can be found mooching around on social medias, generally as at Sarah Jo Smiley, and you can find my semi-regular ramblings about anime reviews at Asian Movie Pulse.
Excellent. And you can find myself across social media, all of them, including the ones I've forgotten the password for, at Uncut Robcast. And until next time with Kiyoshi Kurosawa, thank you very, very much for listening.